Alright boys, what is up? Today we are back with another video. Now this is going to be a different one, trying to spice it up in terms of the videos I do. I'm not trying to keep it just solely based on the likes of showcases and, weekly, monthly updates that the likes of EA do. So yeah, as you can see, hopefully by the title of this video, I am going to be doing a top 10 wish list on things I would like to see implemented or changed in UFC 5. Just doing this considering obviously we recently got the update, or we recently got the announcement on UFC 5. It's officially been confirmed. They will be releasing more details, including the trailer, I believe, in September. So yeah, let's get into it. So first thing in UFC 4 or UFC 5 I'd like to see be changed would just grappling. I'd just like to see it overhauled completely, to be honest. I feel like we've had this old system for too long now. True UFC, 2 to 3, you're seeing you're seeing 2 to 3, you're seeing the strike and the big changes. You don't have to move backwards to throw an uppercut. You don't have to kind of move direction to throw a certain shot. You can actually walk and throw shots. You can put on moving forward pressure, you can strike moving backwards. But I feel as though the grappling hasn't been overhauled much. Even seeing from UFC 3 to UFC 4, the clinch was changed. Now saying that, I feel like, they didn't change it very well, and this is a good reason. We'll get into that further into the video, as we have a Tony Ferguson clinch spam me. But we're just going to kind of go through a few fights. But yeah, I'd love the grappling to be overhauled. A lot of people kind of say, they'd like it to be like Undisputed 3. I'm not too familiar with how it was myself. I never really played the game too in depth. I was never good at it. Even when I did play it, I kind of played it when I was younger. And as well with that, I just want to know how competitively viable would also it be, because I feel like as much as boring as this grappling kind of is, it does have, a decent little skill gap. Some people aren't as good as others. You have your dominant grapplers on the game, you have your strikers. Feel like that's what they do well, but I think it's just getting a bit too stale now, and that is one thing I'd like to see changed in UFC 5. And now on to the second one, which is just a big one for me, and I'm pretty sure everyone, and you'll notice this if you used to play UFC 3, and even if you just play UFC 4 alone, you'll still probably have thought of it at one stage. Here we go, get rage quick, but just weight selection in ranked. You want to be able to choose the weight class that you want to play. Like, nobody is wanting to be forced to play women's or heavyweight. Sometimes people get back from work, or they can only jump on UFC 4 at a certain time. Let's say they only arrive back from doing something, and you just want to play a bit of ranked. You want to have some fun fights, maybe use a Connor, a TJ, a Whitaker, something fun like that. But for some reason, you come on and there's 59 minutes left in women's weight class. And I don't think that it was smart from EA to do. I don't think you should force people to play the weight classes. So that's another thing in UFC 5 I'd like to be changed. I want to be able to choose which weight I want to use, because sometimes I'm trying to do a fighter showcase and the weight's not coming up, or even when I am at that weight class, let's say I'm doing a yarn showcase, I'll be getting flyweight constantly, and it's just such a nuisance to deal with. So yeah, that was the second thing in UFC 5 I'd like to implement, my personal wish list. And I will say there are a lot of things on this list that are left out missing, but these are the things off the top of my head I could just think of. And then number 3, a big crucial one I feel like everyone will really agree upon if you played UFC 4, which if you're watching this video you have. And I'm sure if you're watching this video and you've played UFC 4, you have dealt with clinch spammers on numerous occasions. So in UFC 5, I truly wish that there is a clinch denial option, as there was in UFC 3 when somebody tried to clinch you up. They tried to tie you up, maybe getting into single collar, double collar, an over under, or even a double under, should I say. You could flick RT and the right analog stick up, and that would prevent them from clinching you up, and then you would be back just striking as normal. But in UFC 4, as you all know, there's no real punishment for clinching. There's no actual denial. And you know, even though, you know, I've seen people say, "Oh, use the straight lead hook," and I try and say it myself, but there's so many times you can, you know, try the straight lead hook. There's not enough counter for it, because, you know, once they realise straight lead hook, they're gonna slip, and you end up gassing yourself out more than you do worthy damage to them, you know. So that is probably one of the biggest things. Comment also, you know, if you're kind of going through this video and something comes to your mind, what do you want changed in UFC 5, and what is it you're most looking forward to? And that is unfortunate. But yeah, so that'll be number 3 on the list. I do have 10 things to go through, so it will be kind of a lengthier video, but it'll be, you know, I think it'll give people good ideas of, you know, what hopefully UFC 5 should look like, and also it'll make people think what they want UFC 5 to look like and what they want changed. So going into number 4 here on the list, these are in no particular order, not, you know, they're not I want most to least or anything like this. I would love all these to be implemented. So auto slip and frame reversals, and as well as that free posture transitions. So that being, you know, when you try and maybe get a knockdown and you're trying to finish your opponent, you're in full guard, you're throwing your straights, you're throwing your hooks, and within one post or one slip, they have your back, they have you in top mount, and you have 0 stamina. And it's just really just a stupid mechanic that they introduced, because to be honest, it's nearly riskier going for a knockdown finish for the person that's on top than it is on bottom, because if they do get a slip or a post well timed, which is really easy to do, you know, you're going to find yourself, as I said, in a really dangerous position. Somebody's going to have your back and they can go for a rear naked choke when you have low stamina, or they get you on top mount and they start pummeling your head in. And then the second thing on this, number 4, was free posture transitions. So if you notice, obviously when you have a stamina advantage and you posture up on somebody, you will be able to move in. If you posture up in half guard, you can move from half guard to top mount. You know, from half guard to side control, or if you're in full guard, you can move from, you know, postured up full guard to half guard, or if you have enough of a stamina advantage, you can move straight from postured up full guard to side control. And I don't believe that should be a feature. If you remember in UFC 3, there was a similar mechanic where, you know, if you could move from a postured up transition to another dominant position on the ground in UFC 3, as I said, but your opponent had the opportunity to deny it. It was like a normal transition. So that is another thing. So, you know, I would like in UFC 4 if the grappling stays the same to an extent, or UFC 5 if the grappling stays the same to an extent, I would at least like, you know, to be able to get the opportunity to deny my opponents when they posture up, because sometimes, you know, on high MS especially, you know, let's say somebody gets a denial on you, little pre-deny, and they posture, and you know they want side control, but the posture is so hard to deny because it's so quick that you can't do anything about it, and then they get a free side control off it. So in UFC 5, if you were able to prevent that by, you know, they get the posture up, fair enough, but you know they want the side control, and you can deny that transition into the side control, as opposed to it being free in UFC 4. So yeah, that is another thing on the list. So that being obviously framing and posting, causing just complete reversals, and as well as that free transitions in posture up. Both of them being kind of problems in the ground and pound system. Not the ground and pound system, but the postured up system almost. Number 5, something, and these are all really relatable things, I'd like to think, and things that most people, if not all, should be really agreeing upon. But here it is, knee spam. It's been just a really prevalent thing in UFC 3, UFC 4, and just as long as I can remember, in both of them series, EA UFC series, you can just knee spam until your heart desires, you know? And it's just such an OP tactic, just considering there's no real counter for it, and as well as that, you know, it interrupts hooks and uppercuts. So sometimes I'll be trying to combo off on my opponent, you know, I'll be stringing nice combinations together, you know, maybe an uppercut, hook, uppercut, a jab, uppercut, hook, but all they need to do is throw one body knee, it will sap my stamina, and my hook or uppercut will not reach their head. And they just sap too much stamina. And as well as that, I said there's not much of an actual counter to knee elbows, you know. So you really kind of just have to get lucky, maybe land a straight before their knee comes out. But if their knee comes out before your knee straight, then I mean that's your stamina gone, that's your health gone, and they just have a massive lead off one single thing. So yeah, just knee spam, to be honest. Everyone knows what it is. I just want it fixed. However they're gonna fix it, just fix it, you know. I want them to nerf the range on it. I want them to nerf the stamina, the damage, you know, that it does to your opponent or yourself if you're being the one knee spammed, which I hope none of you out there are knee spamming. Yeah. So let's get into number 6 on the list, halfway through now. Well, on the other end of halfway through. So stamina punishing for failed takedowns and failed submission attempts. So if you've noticed, cheesers all over this game, cheesers all over ranked, but one of the biggest problems that enables them to constantly do this is the lack of punishment for failed takedown attempts and failed submission attempts. You know, if you've watched MMA in real life, and you know, people have been holding onto a guillotine really tightly for a long time in an attempt to submit their opponent, their arms will be tired and their next submission attempt isn't usually as good as the previous one if they've been really going for it for a while, you know. Their arms just kind of tire out, or if they're going for, you know, a submission like a triangle choke, their legs won't be as strong. As you see in kind of with Brian Ortega, he gave it his all with that guillotine against Volkanovski, and he gave it all with his the triangle against Volkanovski. But as soon as them two submission attempts failed, that was really the end of it for him, because it took so much out of him. And that's one thing I'd like to see in UFC 5. I just want to be punished if I failed a late submission attempt, because people can go for a submission attempt, fail it, go for another, fail it, go for another, fail it, go for another, and as I said, there is no punishment for failing these submission attempts. And as well as that, a problem when they get you down to the ground, they're using takedowns, they're using stamina. And a lot of us, I'm sure, watching the channel, if you watch it, I hope you have good takedown defense, because I do too. But you know, you'll have good takedown defense and you'll deny a takedown, but sometimes denying a takedown takes more stamina from yourself than it does the attacker and the person actually shooting the takedown. And I really feel like that needs to be addressed in UFC 5, because I want to kind of, if I have, you know, an opponent shooting 5 takedowns around and I, let's say, deny 4 of them, he should really be tired. He should be really, you know, zombie mode, as we call it, when you're that low in the stamina come the 3rd round, to be honest. Because there's not many fighters other than the likes of a Kamaru Usman, a Kobe Covington, you know, that should be able to keep up that sort of pace, you know, when going for takedown attempts. So that's one thing I really want addressed in UFC 5. Just, you know, there's no punishment for people failing takedown attempts and going for constant submission attempts and not being able to secure any of them. So let's get into number 7 here, and this is an interesting one. I'd like to see your opinions on this one, because it can be really debated, I think. Would you like to see free combos? In my opinion, I'd love to see free combos in UFC 5. I feel like it'll just make it a lot more fun. I don't really like, you know, the selected combos that EA give you, because you feel really limited with it. But you know, if you could make your own combos up, you know, within obviously it having to be realistic to an extent, you know, you can't throw head kick, flying knee, uppercut, you know, spinning back fist. But I would love free combos, almost like they did in Fight Night Champion, where you can kind of just think of your own combos and go for them. And also it leads to a lot more dangerous attacks, you know, because you never really know what's coming. And also it rewards you if you're a creative fighter and you're able to kind of input them longer combos, and they're trickier. You know, there's more of a skill gap in the free combos than there are in these 3 to 4 punch combinations that you know, really everyone goes for with the fighters. So that is one thing I'd honestly, I'd really enjoy it. I think, as I said, it would create a bigger skill gap in UFC 5, and along with that, it would just be a lot more fun, you know. Oh, get stunned there. Yeah, let's head into number 8. So number 8 on my wish list of things I would like to see implemented or changed in UFC 5 would be not being able to see who my opponent is picking in the ranked selection screen. As you know, if you've played UFC 3, you went into ranked, it showed the ping, whether your opponent be a 2 bar, 1 bar, 3 bar, 4 bar, or if they've great internet as well as yourself, it will be a 5 bar connection. But you could only, you know, see the selection screen of the fighters you're going to pick. So, you know, if you were in welterweight, you'd see all the welterweight fighters that you can pick from, but you cannot see the opponent's pick. And I think that's really good, because I don't like that, you know, you go into a ranked fight, you want to pick Demetrius Johnson, but then somebody else is picking, let's say Moreno, because you're using a small Demetrius Johnson, whereas though they would have went Kai Kara France beforehand. I think it leads to kind of, you know, a bit of a tit for tat, and you don't really want to have that just going into a ranked game, you know. I'd love them to just kind of revert back to that UFC 3 ranked system. You can pick your own weight, and you can only see the fighter that you're going to select, and then once you're in the game, you'll know who your opponent picked and who your opponent is. And then number 9 on the list, this is going to be, you know, a throwback to UFC 3. As I've mentioned many a times in this video, I would like clinch grappling back. So I'd like this kind of clinch system mostly thrown out the window. Besides maybe a couple of occasions, you know, in the middle of the octagon, this clinch system may be decent, but for the most of it, I would like UFC 3's clinch system back, where, you know, you had to work into your positions, you had to work to get single collar, you had to work to get over under, you had to work to get tie clinch, you had to work to get double unders, and you had to work to get takedowns as well off of the clinch. And, you know, your opponent could deny you doing that, and then they would be able to get it. I just felt like it was such a bigger skill gap in UFC 3. There's no skill gap in this clinch game whatsoever. You know, you can just clinch, throw a couple knees, they escape. You know, and you just can't dominate anyone in the clinch. You know, the clinch can be just a deciding factor in real life. You know, you see lots of fighters win their fights with nearly the clinch alone. You know, you've seen it in a lot of Usman fights where he's wearing down his opponent on the cage, and you know, he's stomping their toes, he's punching them to the body, he's wearing them down, and then off of that he's able to get a takedown and just dominate the fight further. But in UFC 3 there's none of that. You know, it's kind of like they will escape pretty quickly if they really want to. All they have to do is take a couple of knees maximum, and boom, you're out. I feel like there's no skill gap. Like I said, you can't keep them there, you can't work there, you can't dominate them, you can't be better than your opponent. And I really would like UFC 3's clinch system back, because I felt like, you know, I said, it's more competitive and it leads to a bigger skill gap. You know, I can fight a Division 10 and he can be just nearly as good as me in the clinch as I can be him. But if I were to fight, you know, what would be equivalent, the divisions worked differently back then, but what would be equivalent to a division, let me think, you know, 16 in UFC 4, and I was, you know, obviously I was a Div 20, we'll say, in UFC 3, I'd be able to dominate him in the clinch, I'd be able to get some really nice damage off, I'd be able to get some denials, and it would eventually, you know, for me personally, I'd probably lead to a takedown and a dominant position off of it. But like I said, in this game, that's just not going to happen. Last but not least, the 10th and final thing, I'll probably make a part 2 to this leading up to the game especially, and really do comment what you would like to see changed in UFC 4 or UFC 5, my apologies. Would be, I'd like to see bubbling changed or fixed. You know, everyone knows, you know, when you're on ranked and you get a nice stun eventually and you just get bobble headed, you know, when your opponent's kind of spinning his stick, you can't hit him, and there's just no real counter to it. You try and hit the body, but then they start ducking down and the body damage is nullified. You know, I feel like it's clear cut and simple. I just want EA to fix bobbleheading in UFC 4, and I don't want them to make it a viable way of defense, because once again there's no skill gap in it, and it's a really skillful way of avoiding punches, you know. So that is another thing I would like fixed in UFC 5, just bobbleheading. They need more punishment for it. If you're wanting to spin your stick, your stamina should zap down, and also you shouldn't just be able to dodge every punch brainlessly, you know. It's like you have a force field around you when you're kind of just spinning your stick in a certain direction. Some honourable mentions I want to kind of talk about here. These are just kind of a couple small things I thought of that weren't going to fit into the list because they weren't huge things, you know, but they are definitely annoying. Would be skipping the intro. Come on, everyone knows it is such a pain to watch Israel Adesanya do his intro that takes about 30 seconds. We've been watching it for nearly 3 years straight now. I just want to be able to skip it, and then, you know, I want to be able to skip the post-fight celebration as well. I don't really want to see Izzy doing his, you know, guns that he did in the post-fight little celebration against Robert Whittaker. You know, he's shooting the crowd or whatever it was, you know. And then also just a quick annoying one. If you remember when you're playing friends in UFC 3 online, you're playing them in quick fight or inviting them, you can just tap A to rematch and that was it. You don't have to hold Y. That's a small one, you know, but it is bothersome when you're having to hold Y, and maybe sometimes then the pause menu comes up and it cancels your rematch and you have to hold it for another 10 seconds or so. Like you're trying to revive a friend on Fortnite. It's ridiculous how long you have to hold it for, but yeah. I think that'll be that, boys. If you've enjoyed the video and, you know, the little fights that I've been doing just in between them, a like would be appreciated. And if you have not already subscribed, it'd be much recommended you do so. I'm going to be releasing another one of these probably closer to UFC 5. As I said, UFC 5 trailer will be coming out not next month, but the month after. So it'll be coming out in August. Really excited for it, as the whole community should be. Hoping for a better game, and you know, that's just a hope that maybe some random, you know, EA dev will watch this video and maybe they'll take something even small from it. Even like I said, the intro thing. Just let me skip my intros and let me pick my ranked weight classes, and UFC 5 would be 10 times better than this game already is, because I feel like in a lot of aspects we really took a step back from 3 to 4. But yeah, boys, that'll be that. If you've liked, a like would be appreciated. Once again, appreciate yourself for watching, and yeah, peace out.